So how to have a wedding ceremony in Central Park. All right, so the first thing you need to do would be to get the regular New York State or New York City marriage license if this is a legal ceremony that you're trying to have. The second step would be to hire an officiant or somebody who can sign your marriage license in order to make it legal. So those are the first two things, like sort of practical, logistical things that you would need to have that are non-specific to Central Park, but you need to have those things in order to get legally married in Central Park. Now on to actual Central Park. So Central Park is a beautiful and varied landscape with many gorgeous locations to get married, anywhere from $0 to $1,000 to substantially higher. So let me run through some of your different options here. Okay, so $0. If you're having less than 20 people, you can get married anywhere in Central Park, literally anywhere you want. You do not need a permit if you have less than 20 people. Now there are some rules in terms of music, there's no decoration, that kind of stuff, but you and your guests can turn up anywhere and with an officiant have a wedding ceremony. So I think that's wonderful. So that's the short part of it. Just show up and have a wedding. Now, things start to cost more money if you want specific locations and you want to reserve it. Now, so that $0 refers to everywhere in Central Park with the exception of, obviously, we're talking like the zoo, the boathouse, that tavern, those kinds of places, and the conservatory garden. I'm gonna come to those later. But the $0 would be just anywhere in the park, but again, you're not reserving it. So another couple could show up, and for some of you that may be too risky, right? Okay, so there is a permitting system. It's $25 for select locations in Central Park. Now, I have a whole page dedicated to how to get married in Central Park that runs through many of these locations that you should definitely check out and, and see what location works for you. But there are many locations that can be permitted and there's some that can't be permitted that are still really nice, like the Dean Shelter. But there are a lot of popular spots: Ladies Pavilion, Wagner Cove, the Bethesda Terrace is really hard to reserve anyway, but you can technically reserve it. There are other spots that are reservable and then others that you just can't. So you might like a spot that's not reservable, but if it's a popular spot that's often reserved for weddings like Wagner Cove or Ladies Pavilion, and you want to get married, especially on a Saturday, I would definitely spend the $25. Go ahead and reserve it just so you know that you're not going to come across another couple getting married there. They usually issue, I think, an hour and a half sort of window for each couple to get married so that you're not overlapping too much. But again, people can just show up and get married there. But if you have the permit, which I've only had to do one time, we were like, we have a permit, you guys got to leave, because we were on a time schedule, right? So if you have plans, dinner, whatnot, you have a bunch of guests, you have an officiant, and it's really important if you get married at a certain time, you definitely want to get a permit just to know that there's not somebody else getting married there. Or the other thing that it does, even if it's not about somebody else getting married, it could be about maybe there's a movie shoot or a big concert happening or some other things like that to where it could affect that location, or even the terrace area during the Taste of Summer, which happens in the first week or two of June, it's completely blocked off. So inquiring for a permit at a specific location is inexpensive and an easy way to ensure that that location is going to be yours for the time you would like to have your ceremony. And again, there are a few rules: no music, really no decorations, although I've had people bring in huppahs, I've had temporary decorations of flowers put up. As long as you take everything down, it shouldn't be a problem. But again, this is a public park, and something else to keep in mind, that there are quite a few locations that people just wander in and out. So just something to think about. There are a few more that are more on the private side. In my on my blog, I kind of detail that a little bit more about what locations are going to be considered more private and which ones are not. But again, you can also just choose a quiet part of the ramble, and you're going to have less guests there. But anyway, you may have some other considerations like needing places to sit down for some of your family members. You may need it to be close to a location where the pedicabs can drop off. So those things all are important to consider, and may limit the locations that you would want to choose, but hopefully you can find a spot that works really well for you based on the time of year, or just sort of your general logistics about what you want to experience. Anyway, but I'm always happy to answer questions about some of these locations and what would be ideal for what your specific plans are. But again, plenty of information and some photos on my website that go into detail about some of these locations. Now, all right, so we've covered the free and the $25 option. Now we get to the pricier options here. And I'll start, this is probably the least expensive out of those, would be the conservatory garden. They just revamped the gardens and released all of their new sort of booking procedure. It's really kind of fascinating. It's kind of like a ticketing system, and it's $1,000 now to have a ceremony there. I think it used to be like 500, and that includes the photography permit, and you reserve a specific portion of the gardens. They did indicate now that they were allowing people to move from different spots, where in the past you were like, you booked for one area, that was it. So I like that they did that. They also issue separate photography permits for $200, which I think is really great. That's a way. Check out their website. It has more information on, you know, some of the other restrictions, like you really can't bring in chairs. I mean, there's pros and cons with that. $1,000 is still a, you know, it's a good bit of money to not have any rain shelter, you know, to not being able to bring in chairs, not have music, that kind of stuff. So you may find another part of the park that's going to cost substantially less, but if you really love the gardens and want to just go there for photos, we can certainly book a $200 photography permit. One other thing to bear in mind, that if you don't know Central Park really well, the conservatory gardens, as beautiful as they are pretty far to the north. So they're not close to a lot of other parts of the park that I typically include when I'm doing photos in Central Park. So it's not near the Bethesda Terrace and Fountain, any of that kind of stuff. Now, obviously it's right on Fifth Avenue, so it's really easy to access. We can certainly take a, you know, Uber or taxi up there and incorporate it within our day, but I've never like done where we walked like the whole way. Like it probably doesn't make any sense. So just something to keep in mind, logistically speaking, that it might not fit in with your overall plans, but it might actually be that. I've had some weddings where we had a beautiful intimate wedding in the conservatory garden and then went to a great restaurant on the Upper East Side. So you can definitely do that. And there are some great photography spots just right around that area, but it is quite a distance from sort of the bulk of the most popular spots that are located within the southern end of the park. So just keep that in mind. Okay. And then, of course, for your like ultra premium pricing, we have the Central Park Zoo, which is really like a regular wedding venue. The Boathouse does weddings, as well as Tavern on the Green. Now, aside from the zoo, their two restaurants can accommodate like an intimate reception or lunch, you know, a small party. I've had couples do that. Just have one of those free or $25 ceremonies in the park, and then pop on over to one, or end up at one of those locations. And even just to go to the bar at Tavern is really nice. But they do have options for intimate weddings as well as for large full-scale weekend weddings. I've shot a couple of those as well, and that's really beautiful. You get to take advantage of the beauty in Central Park, as well as have a full service catered, you know, have a band, everything in one of these locations and in the park. I did a wedding at the Central Park Zoo, which was really incredible. It's a really unique location to photograph, but also to just have a ceremony. I mean, like the skyline, it's really, really beautiful. But again, the zoo is probably, I don't know if the zoo, I guess the zoo, I don't know, I'm trying to think which is the most expensive. Probably the zoo, because you're bringing in a ton of rentals. It's not normally a place that has tables, right, for people. It has like a little cafe, but I think the tables are like picnic tables. So you have to bring in, I think they keep a tent up, but you're bringing in like all of your rentals. You know, you're bringing in quite a lot of things, and you're probably required to have a planner. So that's going to increase the cost. I think Tavern and the Boathouse, since they are restaurants, that they're probably going to be a little bit less expensive, but also still both premium locations, especially on weekends, you know, when it comes to having a wedding ceremony in Central Park. So I love that you have lots of options. Everybody can still take photos in front of the Bethesda Terrace and Fountain, like that is free. Although going earlier rather than later is probably better normally, you know, in terms of lighting and crowds. But anyway, I love the park for wedding ceremonies as well as for photos. And yeah, I can chat all day about all the wonderful options that Central Park has for weddings.